Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hammer Podcast. Today is July 1st, 2024. And this is part two with Carissa. Carissa went to the Victory Christian Academy in Jay, Florida. What years was that, Carissa?
From 92 to 94. 1992 to 1994.
1994. Okay. Before we start that, let me give a little announcement. Tomorrow at 6:15, I'm going to be doing a podcast with Eric. Eric went to the Family Foundation School in Hancock, New York. Like I said, it'll be at 6:15, not 5 o'clock. All right. So, Carissa.
Hi. Thanks for having me back.
From the beautiful state of Hawaii.
How yes. Nice. Yes.
Surfing, beaches. Oh man.
Yeah. All that.
Do you do any surfing?
No, I don't do any surfing. No.
No sailboarding or anything like that? No.
No. I'm more of a type of person that would like to sit on the boat and cruise. You know. Yeah. We do these Friday night sailing events from Ala Moana Beach Park to Diamond Head, and then they have the fireworks at the Hilton Hawaiian Village. So
okay. So part two. Let's get into what did you let's go ahead and start with what you were talking about just a few minutes ago about the
Oh yeah. So I was in Victory from 1992 to 1994. And prior to this the podcast before this, we talked about how Victory helped with my kidnapping, right? And I was really kidnapped. I was kidnapped from the state of Hawaii. I was under their supervision, not my parents. And that really was an impact. And then also getting to Victory, the censorship of all and any communication, no library, no books, no mail, no telephone. We couldn't use the phone for 3 months. And again, we weren't allowed to use the phone. We could only use the phone if there was an incoming call from an immediate family member. There was no way that we could sneak out mail or sneak any information out. Right. It was really locked down. And so when I first got there, my head was shaved. So I had a shaved head. And
did you do that yourself?
Yeah, I did. I was a grunge skater kid, and going through this kind of androgynous stage of my life, right? And I just got my period, right? So I was a real tomboy. I was really athletic. And back in the early 90s and the 80s, they didn't have organized female teams. And if you wanted to play sports, you played on boys' teams. And so, if you wanted to play with the boys, you had to be a little tough. And so, it shaved my head. So when I came in, my head was shaved, and then I got stripped of all my possessions and everything. And I can't remember what day I came in, but there's this thing called a Saturday night rap, and they talk about all the problems with all the girls there, and the top tier girls bring up stuff, and everybody brings up stuff. And it was my first week there. I've been there maybe a couple days, and I'm thinking this is the Twilight Zone, right? Because I came from a secular family, and I'm still not religious today. So it's very difficult for me to understand all this, right? And
Right.
and
Right.
like even like like the whole thing is like, even with the whole thing is like, oh, God did it, right? So like you don't have like any value, right? You didn't contribute to it at all. It was all God. And then I'm like, this is weird. So anyway, and there's all these weird rules, and very, very weird rules, and it takes a lot of time to figure them out. And so the first drop that I was there, they brought me up as a lesbian. And, that was because, I had my shaved
Oh,
head,
shaved
right?
head.
And and also because I'm from Hawaii, we're used to walking around in hardly any clothes. We don't really think about it. It's very Hawaii-ish. We're at the beach, we're in bathing suits, or we're in bathing suit tops. It, like we just, but they made everything so highly sexualized. Um, so I got brought up as a lesbian, and the thing is, I'm 14 years old, and I don't even really know what a lesbian is, and um, I can remember just sitting there and everybody like looking at me and talking about my sexuality, right? And not really talking about asking me about my sexuality or my sexual preferences, right? Just automatically making the assumption because I look different, right? Because I had a shaved head, and I have a very um, secular attitude, and
And very
and
tomboyish. You know.
very tomboyish. Also,
Yeah.
also like body confident, and that's not a thing there. And so it, I just remember sitting there thinking that I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand why sexuality was an issue. I I'm almost pretty sure the girl that brought me up was a lesbian, and so because that was one of my first experiences, kind of being on the spotlight. Like for years and years and years, because I didn't really understand what victory was until recently, with all these documentaries coming out on Netflix and HBO and the Duggar family and things like that. When people would ask me about it, I would tell them I was at a conversion school because because that's how I was treated, right?
Right.
Um, and so so uh, so the sexuality was really hyper focused on, and we were groomed to not have a voice, right? Because we're women, and education wasn't important. We didn't need to know like higher math. All we needed to know was understand is like fractions because of cooking. I have no idea like how I got a college scholarship for college and graduated with coming out of that situation, right? Because it's not school at all. And and so like you're completely beat down, and it's men, right? Men, old, especially like older men. Like these guys are the guys that you want to marry, and you need to give your life to, and you need to like surrender to because they know better. Um
Is this a Christian? Is
and
this a Christian organization?
yeah, well, this is victory, right?
It sounds an awful lot like Islam.
It does, doesn't it? It does.
Yes, it does.
It
It
does.
does.
It does. But we didn't have a voice. We didn't have any rights. Like we were like nothing, right? We're
You're like
like
second.
the like yeah. We're
You're like
only there to
second.
procreate.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Like so our education was was all faith based. And like science was the Bible, and yeah, and like math, we didn't. I don't remember ever learning anything over, fractions because that was for cooking. Um,
Did they have
and
cooking classes?
no, we didn't have cooking classes, but they did. We did have cooking helpers, and so I mentioned in my last podcast, like in order to get to the top tier at Victory, you go to being a kitchen helper. And then after you're a kitchen helper, then you can go and you usually will get promoted to manage the other girls. Um, and so I think that the kitchen is also like kind of teaching you how to like prepare yourself to be barefoot and pregnant and cook, right? Like, uh,
The typical Christian
so
woman, yes.
don't have any thoughts of your own, right? Don't ask any questions. Don't be curious. Um,
The obedient
so
housewife.
so obedient, yes, and very obedient, and that's what they beat you down to be is completely obedient and subservient. And um, and the thing is even though like I rebelled for a little while, I got to the point where usually the girls only stay there for a year, but I got to the point where I stayed there longer because Victory told my parents that I wasn't ready to come home, and so my parents thinking that they're God, right, and your child's changed, and but the thing is like being subservient was the safer place to be, you know, getting in line, following the rules, that was safe because
Yeah.
being anything other than that is unsafe. And so, and then when you realize that, then you get to a point where you're even though you like there's a rational part of your brain that that it's not right. um, you get to a point where you are brainwashed
Yeah.
because you've been doing it so long, right? And then like you start believing like the outside world is scary, and no,
Because
like
that's that's
everybody,
what they that's what they teach you.
yes, yeah, the
You're safe.
outside world is scary.
Yeah. You're safer
Hmm.
with them than you are with the outside world.
Yeah, the outside world, even if like you go to like a Christian church or a Baptist church, um, because they have guitar music and drums and things like that, they're letting Satan in,
Yeah.
right? So nothing nothing in the outside world is as pure as this independent fundamental Baptist church.
Yes. In that
Um,
environment, in that environment.
right, specifically that environment, right? Because um, like, and the thing is, like, they were so judgy, like, because all of those other church guys, they're the ones going to hell, right? They're the sinners. Um, and so it's just this very small group, and yeah, so you don't eat like once you fall in and you realize like falling in is the safe move, right? And but you can't help then be kind of brainwashed, and so and it's super lonely. You don't have like I listen to other girls in their experiences, and they were able to create bonds. But where I was, we weren't able to create bonds because um, you didn't know who to trust, right? And if they saw it was if anybody made any kind of accusation or anything like, oh, so and so and so and so are hanging out too much, then they get put on separation, and that means they have to be like always 6 feet apart. They can't make eye contact, and a lot of times they're placed back on buddy, like 24-hour surveillance with another person to
Sure.
ensure that that friendship doesn't bloom into anything, or it doesn't bloom into a friendship. And
Well, yeah, they want to make sure that you're not polluting uh, to escape or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, or even talking about your past, right? Anything that has
Sure.
to do with your past, you can't talk about your past. And the thing is, like, you're supposed to be there to be able to heal, and you're not healing because you can't talk about your past. And anything in your past was evil and from the devil, um, and like the dirty, dirty sinner, right? Like, so, like, in other words, even words we couldn't use. We couldn't use the word cool, right? Because that could be like, yeah, cigarettes we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And
Or rock music or something like that.
music, yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, there were times where girls would like, say certain things, and then you would know, okay, that's my person, right? But you're also in this like heightened state of like self-preservation, and um and that's probably why like a lot of us didn't get our monthly cycles, because we were in such a vigilant state all the time. Everything was hyper vigilant. Everything had to be a certain way, like the way we fold our clothes, the way we hung our clothes, like the way, just the way we did everything was had to be in this very, very pinhold pigeon situation. And so when you get out of there, you don't know how to think for yourself. And I remember when I got out, I was scared, because I I just thought everybody in the around me was going to hell, right? Then I also thought that like, you know like if I get caught listening to like music, like 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 my rock or my grunge or my punk music, I'd be like sinning again, and I would be backsliding, and my soul's going to hell, and
Did you listen
uh,
to any grunge?
I did, I did. So
What were your favorite bands?
so I like No FX and Pennywise um, and the Clamp and the Ramones and
Ramones.
the thing is, like, I listen to that music now and I'm like, oh, that's not even hardcore,
No,
like, no, that's not,
not even close. Not even close.
no, no. So yeah, so the thing is, like, it's interesting. The three of the girls that were there, that were from Hawaii, we didn't know each other, but we kind of tried to keep in contact afterwards because our families knew each other. Our families somehow found each other, and because they were all worried about us somehow, and they found somebody that referred them to Victory Christian Academy, and because our parents knew the parents, it was easy for us to get in contact with each other once we left, and we all kind of got there about the same. And the thing is, like, two of us, myself and another girl, within like 6 months of leaving, we were living with adult men, like both of us. Um, and then Candace got out, and then her parents put her back in after, and she stayed there till
Really?
she was 18. Yeah, she stayed there
Wow.
till she was 18. But right after she got out, she got pregnant, and so um, yeah, they both. And then when I think about it now, like, and I think back to it, they they like they were pedophiles. It was so not healthy situation, right? But our parents were fine with that. Yeah, like fine with it. I don't even know if they were or not. They just got to a point where they were like, oh, we're gonna just let you do whatever. Like okay, a grown man is taking care of you now, and you don't need to go to school. So I ended up dropping out, and I ended up getting my GED. And then the thing is, then um then my personality started coming out. My personality started coming back, and I'm really a feminist. I'm very strong, and I like even today, like I live alone. Like I have my own business. Like I don't have any kids. Like I don't want people telling me what to do. It's because it's a very traumatizing. Because what happened was after I started living with him, he basically he sex trafficked me, and like at 16, 17 years old, I started working in strip bars to support him, and thinking that this is okay because I'm in this weird spot, right? Where like I just got out of this brainwashing situation, but there's lingering effects of that brainwashing, you
Sure.
know, and and they really like impact you your whole life. And and it's not until you like start talking about it and you start like going back through like the indexes of your life and saying, oh man, this is really fucked up. This is really, really fucked up. And so when that happened and I started supporting him, I got to a point um, where I felt that it wasn't right, that like, and I wasn't comfortable doing this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
to like support, a grown man, and I'm a child, right? And I shouldn't even be in that situation or working, in in clubs because I'm a minor still.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and then I I'm I'm alone again. So like that situation happened when I ended up leaving Hawaii and moving with him to Virginia. And so I'm in Virginia and I'm a minor, and um, again, like I can't really make my own money unless it's like, through being trafficked. And um, and I got to a point where I was like, this is wrong. And I ended up going into a domestic violence shelter in Virginia. And I stayed at the domestic violence shelter. And at the time, do you remember that song Runaway Train?
Oh
Runaway
yeah.
Train.
By
Yeah,
by
yeah.
Soul Asylum. Yep.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay,
Yes.
so at that time they had this like uh the runaway thing where like if a kid was a runaway or estranged from a family home or like escaping like sex trafficking and things like that, the Greyhound bus and airlines would help return kids to their families, right? And um, so at the DV shelter, while I'm at the DV shelter, the United Way gets me to Washington D.C. While I'm on Washington D.C., um, at the Greyhound station, like waiting for like a voucher to get to California, because at that time, back in the 90s, to travel to the West Coast, to fly to the I mean the East Coast to Hawaii, was between $8 to $1,000. Like, and that was a lot of money back then. It's a lot of money now.
Yeah.
And so the plan was to get me on a Greyhound bus to California, and then I would fly out of California to Hawaii. And and this is the thing about Victory. I think Victory, like I looked like they groomed you to look like, oh, I can prey on her, right? Like I feel like because like what happened was after that I get to the Greyhound station in DC, and there's this mezzanine and where the upper management looks down and can see, the buses, right, and all the
Right.
terminals and then people, right, and so I am down there, and I'm also hanging out with other troubled teens and everything, and then I get brought upstairs to talk to management. And so I go up to the second floor, like the glass mezzanine, and it was an Indian guy, and he was the head manager of the Greyhound, and also he was overseeing this troubled teen program, right? And
Okay.
he tells me that he's going to help me, and that I qualify, and da 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 da, and I'm grateful, and I haven't showered for days, and uh, he offers me a hotel room or a motel room at the Howard Johnson, which is contracted to the Greyhound, and so of course I accept, right? Because like now I have a safe place to sleep. Like I don't have to worry about like my bus tomorrow morning. My like I also like have food now, and I can also take a shower. And so we get there. I get to the Howard Johnson, and I'm thinking everything is cool, right? And also, you meet other people there, right? Your other troubled teens that are trying to like get home. And so there was another teen that I like brought to the hotel room because I didn't think that anything of it, right? Like we're both on the same program. And then at 11 o'clock, the Greyhound manager, he comes by my hotel room, and he knocks on the door, and he comes in, and you know I'm I'm vulnerable. I'm in a curious situation. I he knows that I'm unable to get a hold of my family, right? Like and so the friend that I had, like the person that I was traveling with, right? That I met in the Greyhound station, he hides behind the curtain of the Howard Johnson, like in the Howard Johnson room. I can even still kind of picture the room. He comes in and he sits on the bed, and he asks me to sit next to him, and he shows me pictures of his wife and his young kids and everything, and then he proceeds to rape me. And um, and then he like leaves $60 on the bedstand, and he leaves. And then on the trip, it takes me like a week to get to California on the Greyhound. But then in California, it happens again. Where like a Greyhound employee that knew I was part of the program, like
Right.
knows that I'm having difficulties getting to, so where the Greyhound station is in LA, and where the airport is pretty far, and I have no money, and like my best friend is paying for my ticket from Hawaii to from California to Hawaii, and she's used all her money to get the ticket, and she's made the ticket for 24 hours in advance to give me enough time to get to the airport. And um, and so like, I'm sitting there totally exhausted after like a week of, driving cross
Getting
country.
that bug.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, like halfway through the trip, you run out of food vouchers and things like that. And so um, he gets off his shift, and he asked me if if I need a room. And I'm thinking this is part of the program again, right? And the room has a shuttle to the airport, and of course I'm going to take it. And so I take it, and like again, the same situation happens. He like proceeds to like rape me, and then they go, and like I just remember just being so glad that they were gone, right? Like, and then now I can sleep. And when I look back at these situations of me being sex trafficked multiple times by multiple older men in these like higher situations where like I'm at their mercy for them to help me, right? It just, I feel like a lot of it stems from victory, from them like grooming me to not speak up, to not have a voice, to be like to that men were everything, right? Like the men are everything, especially like any man in kind of a powerful position, right? Because they're our protectors,
Right.
like. And
Because the Christian uh, philosophy is basically the man is the head of the household. Whatever he says goes. You know what I
whatever
mean?
he says goes.
Yes.
Whatever he says goes.
So you said being subservient to men.
And
Men
it's
have
our
that.
fault, right? It's our fault. Like, so like even like,
According to them, yes, it is.
right. Yeah, so me being sex trafficked, me being targeted was my fault, right? And it's all my fault. And these men that are in charge of these programs, right? I believe they all know what to look for. There has to be it just couldn't be me, right? I just felt like it couldn't be me, like. And maybe I'm blaming or whatever, but you know I it took me years and years and years after that to really like be able to feel comfortable with saying no, or telling people, no, I don't have to explain to you what I'm doing. Like, I don't need to tell you anything, like they get you to a point where you can't say no. Anything they ask you, you feel like you have to do. And
It's called programming,
it is programming.
brainwashing, but you have to be deprogrammed from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there is no there's no support or deprogramming, or even a lot of like therapists or anything you go to, they don't understand that stuff unless they specialize in cult behavior. And then when you're a kid, you don't know that, you don't realize that it's like, you're a cult or you're a brainwashed, because you want to think that you're strong and you can do it and you're resilient, and everything's going to be okay, and none of these things really happened, or they don't really make that big of a difference, or um but they do, right? And then you kind of like, you step them down and you step them down and step them down, and you don't realize that those things are triggering, your choices, and you're actually not making choices, right? Because it's part of the programming, like you said.
Well, when you have a book, the Bible, that says that the women must be silent in church. Women as men are the head of the household. Women must submit to the man. It it leaves a lot of women vulnerable to
Yeah,
stuff that happened, like it would happen to you.
yeah, right. Because you don't feel like you have the right to say no. Like you feel like you deserved it, right? You feel like you were asking for it. Um,
Right.
and that goes back to where I was talking about, the situation when I was there at Victory Christian Academy, right? There was a girl there that was rumored to believe to be having intimate relationships with Brother Michael Palmer at the time. And I mentioned this in my last podcast that us girls, we blamed her, right? And she was, I believe her, all our situations there were difficult, but I believe that hers was probably more difficult. Because, everybody knew about it, right?
Right.
And everybody blamed her, the child,
It's one
even
of
the
those
adult.
things. Right. It's one of those things where the woman or the girl has ask questions. I mean, did I smile at him? Did I try to seduce him? You know what I mean? Like all these thoughts go into your head. What did I do to have this done to me? Maybe it is my fault. You know what I mean? That kind of thing, which it's not. And a lot of times, some guys, being a guy myself, some woman kind of cracks a smile or something. Some guys take it the wrong way. You know what I mean? Some guys just say, "Oh, she's just smiling, so I'll smile back at her," and that's the end of it. But some guys take it as a invitation to, hey, come sleep with me or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Like, yeah. Like, oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I know
it's just
exactly.
little signals. This is little signals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they're
Like
getting
for
them mixed up, right?
right,
You
right,
know?
and like I said, the woman asked the question, "What did I do? Did I smile at him wrong? Was a word perfume that kind of excited him? I mean, you start asking question yourself basically, which you
Well, the
shouldn't be
thing
you
is
shouldn't
that
have
the
to.
men put it on us too, right? The men in these programs, they put it on us, right? Like,
Right.
and the
Yeah.
older adult women too, right? Like, I don't know, like again, they're also programmed and they're groomed, right, to see the younger
Right.
girls as the enemies, right? Like putting their husbands or their sons or you know
Sure.
like at risk, and they like the thing is I feel like these guys that open these kinds of programs know
Uh-huh.
specifically what they're doing, right? They know, like these guys that even worked in these the programs there where I was talking about the teen programs, right? These men that work in these teen programs, a lot of times they're the predators. A lot of times predators work for these programs because they know that they're going to have a bunch of people that they can prey on that are vulnerable, that have no voice, that nobody believes them. They have nowhere to go. They have no outcry. You know, also, we don't feel like we're valued, right? Like, would anybody ever believe us? And so I with the Greyhound bus situation, I'm positive that I am not the only teenager that this happened to. You
Oh, I'm
know,
sure. Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
absolutely sure. And like just like with these troubled teen industries that are started by men, it gives them a plethora of young girls to victimize and to kind of pick and choose too. And
And the thing is, these places are not run by the states or private schools, so they don't use, they don't have background checks to see if this person has been convicted of any type of sex crime or any type of crime for that matter. So they just let them in, or they could be a friend of theirs,
Yeah, and
You
the thing
know,
is, because your parents think it's religious based, right? They don't think to background check the school,
sure.
right? Yeah,
They think,
you
well,
know,
it's a Christian school. I mean, they're men of God. They must it must be okay. It's not the way to
of
do it.
course, yes, and they surrender all their rights, right? Like the whole time I was at Victory, my parents never once protected me. You know, there were situations that arose. Um, I mean, it sounds so petty when I think about it, but it was such a difficult situation. My mother came to visit me once, and um, she left some things with me, you know, and my mother is Caucasian, so she's very fair skinned, and the makeup that she left with me didn't really look good against my skin tone, and I gave it to another girl. One of the other girls said that I stole it from her, and because it didn't go through the proper protocol of channels, um, you know, I got severely punished. I mean, severely punished, and so the school actually called my mother and said, "Hey, did you give this to her?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't remember." You know, and
That didn't help.
it no, it doesn't help, you know, but the parents are also trained like your daughter is a compulsive liar. You can't
Right.
believe her, right? She's gonna do whatever she can do to like not take accountability for her actions. Like, oh, that makes me so mad when I
Let's
think
see.
about it.
We got somebody here who says, "Hi, Carissa. I was at VCA with you. My name back then was Nessie. Do you remember her?
Hi. No, maybe if I saw
She's
her, saw a picture.
well, she's in the chat, so she's watching.
Nice.
So yeah. So yeah, lot
So,
of these. It just seems to
hmm
me that as long as they're not regulated, as long as the state doesn't. Oh, I'm sorry. She put like Nisi, not Nessie. Nisi. No, still doesn't ring a bell.
no, you know, like it was so um it was so traumatizing for me, right? And it was also very isolating, and like I mentioned in my like first podcast, like the first week I was there, you know, there was another girl there, and we talked about leaving, right? Just talked about leaving, and you know, getting out of there, and I was punished very severely again, and then after that it was like I don't even know how they found out, right? I don't know if she might have mentioned it to somebody, because I don't think I mentioned it to anybody, you know, just casually, and then that person mentioned it to, you know, one of the employees and staff, and uh and then I just was like, okay, I can't trust anybody, right? Because the girls are in charge of the girls, right? The girl, and then
Right.
again, right? We talked about like the rats, right? Where the girls that are in charge of the girls just tear into the other girls, right? They bring them up for really fictitious, stupid micromanaging things that in the bigger picture of life really don't matter. Um, but you just want to be as much as a wallflower as possible, you know, and keep your head down, and that's why like I chose to stay a dining room helper, because I in charge of the dining room. I got to work alone a lot. Um, and that and still like that has echoed throughout my whole life, right? I'm alone now, I live alone, you know, like I spend a lot of my time by myself, you know, and like I enjoy it, but that's also because I also feel safe, you know, and that's the impact of these schools, right? You don't realize how negative you've been impacted by these schools until you start looking back. And it wasn't until I started talking to my niece about some of this stuff, and she looked at me and she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened." And I was like, "What are you talking about? This is just life, and that's, I mean, that's how brainwashed I am still, right? And I'm rationalizing inappropriate behavior,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and then also blaming myself too, right? Because it is all about us, right? It's always the girl's fault. It's never the parents' fault, right? It doesn't matter if your parents used to beat you. Like my parents used to beat me, and so that's why I acted out. Like we don't care. We don't give a shit about that, right? Like your parents have a right to like beat you corporal punishment because the Bible says so, right? So
Spare the rod.
spoil the
You spare the
child.
rod, spoil the
Oh,
child. Exactly.
yeah. So so there was no talking, right? You learn not to talk, and then what happens is later on you don't realize how how negatively these things influence your decisions in your life, and can lead you down these like paths. And it's also hard to break out of. It took me years to kind of break out of that stuff, right? And 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 it, and, it, and that's why I'm also grateful for your platform, because we didn't have a place to go. There is no support group. There is no outreach, and like I mentioned before, unless you like specifically like get a cult therapist, right? Like therapists don't understand what it is, and it sounds so crazy too when you talk about it, right? It sounds so outer space, you know.
It sounds out
Like
there.
how can this
Yes.
yeah, how can this happen in America? And I mean, that's the reason why Victory Christian Academy left California, was because the state started getting involved on that end. And so when they that's where I ended up being in Florida. And so that's why the school was so small when I first got there, because it just recently kind of opened up, from like the California school. And the reason that they went to Florida was because Florida has these extreme freedom of religious rights, and as long as it's being taught under like I guess religious umbrella, then it doesn't need to be run by any kind of accreditation or any kind of oversight or anything like that.
Right.
And
I believe Palmer's also ran the Victory Christian Academy in California as well, if I'm not
he did. He
mistaken.
ran that. Yes, yes, he did run that one too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ran that right to the ground. Yeah.
hmm
So
Yeah, and then I think they opened another one in Mexico as well. So, you know, yeah. And so it's crazy how like it's impacted my life, and I didn't really realize it for a long time. Like you're in denial, and you're also in this like stage of where you really self-loathe yourself, right? And they get you to a point where you feel like you can't trust you and your choices and what you feel is right. Like you start believing is intrinsically wrong. So like even though like I knew it was wrong to be with like adult men, right? Like 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 because of that programming, right? It's not wrong. It's not wrong to be with an older guy that is going to take care of you, right? It's like you when you're put in a situation where like a man is going to overpower you, you have to submit, right? You
Oh
don't
yeah.
have the right to scream out and say no or whatever, and it's your fault. And this is very, very, very dangerous. When a child can't trust their own judgment, you guys, my dogs, when the child can't trust their own judgment and they don't feel like they can go and talk to anybody about this stuff because they're going to be victimized, uh, it creates it creates this amazing space for children to become victimized, right?
Sure.
Right, like I was saying, I feel like I, it's interesting because I don't know, like, what if, right? Like, but what if I never went to victory? Would those things happen to me? I'm not sure. I don't. Like, part of me doesn't believe so because they like I always feel that my like core self is a feminist, and I don't believe that I would have put myself in those positions where, or and again, like, here I am victim blaming myself again. I'm saying I put myself in those positions, but I didn't, right? Like, I
Right.
didn't, and I need to stop doing that, and so it's stuff that stays with you your whole life, right? And it echoes throughout all your choices and your decisions. And it took me years and years and years to get to the point where where I'm vocal, and I have no problem, like, you know like voicing, sexual harassment in the workplace, and women's rights and things like that, because um, even though they might have not gone to victory, it still echoes in our society, right? That the women are wrong, right? There's still that kind of, like, well, what did she do, right, to
Yeah.
deserve this, right? And then, like, we're like, oh, we don't want to ruin their career, and we don't want to do this, and we don't want to do that. And I'm like, fuck them, like, fuck them. They, the any kind of sexual harassment is wrong, period.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like, and you have the right to feel safe,
The
like.
only problem with the law is the fact that there are statutes of limitation when it comes to that stuff.
It
You know what I
does,
mean?
and the law is getting better, because they're realizing that people like myself, right? Like, when I think about this teen situation with the Greyhound, where we're going to get your teens home safe program, right? You know, again, we're vulnerable, at risk teens, right? Living on the street, trying to figure out a way to get to safety, and we're preyed upon. And, like, I I didn't really start thinking about this stuff until the Netflix documentary came out, and the Duggar guy got exposed from Ashley Madison app, right? And then the Let Us Pray stuff, and then it kind of triggers things, and then you start looking back, and you're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. It's a systemic problem within our country, and I feel like these 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 like troubled teen things and everything, they bring in predators. They bring in because it takes an interesting kind of person to want to work in a program like that, right?
Right.
And and then also, like, with, yeah, it
And
just
the,
makes it
and the,
right. It's just
right.
so
And the thing
much.
is,
It's so overwhelming.
and the thing is, a lot of these places, like I said, the reason why a lot of these sexual predators are attracted to these troubled teen homes where you have vulnerable kids is because exactly the case. They're troubled teen homes. They're troubled teens. So if anything happens, if they
Nobody's
end
gonna
up
believe
getting
them.
sexually, nobody's going to believe them. Exactly. They could get
Nobody's
away
gonna
with it.
believe them. Yeah,
They can get
yeah,
away with it
because
over
yeah,
and over again.
over and over again. Nobody's gonna believe us. And I was telling you, like my parents like completely surrendered everything, right, to them, and believed in in everything. Like they said they told my parents that they felt like I wasn't completely reformed and I needed to be there longer, and my parents agreed. And then like it's just you're absolutely alone. Nobody is to believe you. And again, right, you don't have access to a telephone. You don't have access to the outside world. We're not even allowed to go into a library or anything like that. And if we are off campus, we are so highly watched, right? And we're not left alone with people from other congregations or anything like that. And and then there's this like fear too, right? This real fear of 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 going against the man, right, and going to hell, right? Like these people are to be honored and cherished and almost like God, like rock stars, right? Like they
Yeah, someone to look up to,
right and
like a role
and
model.
yeah, yes, and they're so not, right? They're so not
Yeah,
not.
that's
And
true.
and 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 because you do look up to them as role models, and you do look out to them as the people that have the ability to like get you out of the program and to set you free. And uh, there's this unhealthy power balance, right? And uh, kids will do whatever we need to do to get out of those situations, and that makes us extremely vulnerable to predators.
They want you to drop your guard, is what they want you to do.
But
And once your guard is
but you
dropped,
and all our rationalization, all any kind of free will thinking too, like anything. and
yep,
and I think that's why they want us to memorize huge scriptures in the Bible, uh, and I mean, like, oh, I don't even like remember the stuff I memorized there, but like we had to
neither do I.
memorize a ton of Bible verses and be able to like recall them at any time of the day if anybody asked us. I mean, at meal times we had to say whatever before we ate. We had to say whatever Bible verses was called randomly. But if you didn't know those Bible verses, you could have been pulled out and you could be punished. So, and again, you could be pulled out at any point of day and be like have to recite those verses. And I feel like when you're actively memorizing stuff that it pushes out other thinking, right? Because that's part of the programming and part of the conditioning, right? When you're so hyper focused on memorizing huge passages of the Bible and being able to like recite them at any point in time, at any point in the day, that pushes out any kind of opportunity for you to to have free time in your mind, right? To
You're preoccupied with other things.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
imagination, yeah, you totally. So and then when you get out, right? You can't behave that way in society, right? Like that the way that you behaved in Victory and the way that you were groomed in these troubled teen industries, it it doesn't reflect real life at all. Like there is really no real life skills that they give you, and that's why it's just when I have no idea how I passed the GED, and I have no idea how I went to college, because that is not school, right? That's
Yeah.
not school at all.
The thing is, a lot of these places, they the stuff that you're taught, um, what they expect, I believe, is that once you get out of that school, whatever school you're in, that you're going to take that mindset with you home. That way, you can find a church just like the one, just like the denomination you were at, and grow up and live a life as a Christian. What they little do they know is the fact that a lot of these people, when they get out of there, they get as far away from that as they can. They don't want to be any part of it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I came from a family that is not in the church, right? So my parents don't go to church every Sunday. My parents don't ever. I don't remember my parents ever going to church. So the thing is, here, I think that I was probably an outliner when it came to this, because most of the girls, most of their parents were hyper religious, anyways. A lot of the girls that went there. And so there was just a handful of us where, our parents weren't religious, that they just knew people from their work life, or, personal or professional life. And, that the kind of the independent fundamental Baptist lifestyle kind of maybe overlapped a little bit. um, but but to I really believe that, my parents were going to go to hell, right? My mom was raised Catholic, my dad was raised nothing, and so like believing that your parents are going to hell, right? And thinking that you have to be accountable for their souls and things like that. And again, I'm in Hawaii, so Hawaii is we're a very democratic, very liberal, ultra liberal state, right? And so for them to believe that, I was going to get out of there and then find an IBF church, no way. There's no way, right? And then you have your parents that aren't in the church either, and then there's this weird dichotomy, right? There's this weird um, conflicts, right? And so
Right.
I think that's where, um, uh, that's where, my parents were like, okay, you want to go and live with an older guy, that's fine, but go,
Yeah.
and
Do you
so
think
it,
do you
uh-huh.
do you think maybe if they had just not sent you there, and I know hindsight's 2020, I hear it all the time, but if they didn't send you there and just you acted out or whatever, just seemed to just you grew up basically and
Yeah,
not
you
done
grow
that,
out of it. You grow
your
out
life
of a lot of that stuff.
your life would have probably been a lot different.
My life would have been a lot different if my parents were to trust themselves, right? I feel a lot of it, my parents didn't trust themselves and their ability to parent. And, um, you know, and not because they didn't trust themselves, right? They didn't trust me, right? And so because they it's very normal for teenagers to go through a phase where they don't talk to their parents,
Yep.
and they have to figure out their own autonomy, and they're breaking away, right? They're learning how to become adults. And I think that scared my parents. And I feel like, yes, I feel like if they would have trusted themselves, and then they would have trusted me, that this time that I lost, um, through victory, and then through being sex trafficked, and then trying to figure out how to heal and move forward. Um, I feel like I could have been different. I feel like That's so terrible to say. I feel like things could have been different for me. Like, I, you know, like because I had to fight so much to become the person I am. I feel that that time right there was lost potential because I feel that person was always there, but because that person wasn't nurtured, right, and
Right.
was actively
Suppressed.
trying to be erased, yeah,
Yeah.
raised and suppressed, that that a lot of time got lost. You know, it wasn't until I was 22 years old and I was like, all right, 9/11 just happened, and I'm like, all right, I'm out of here. And I flew to Thailand and I lived overseas for 8 years. And it wasn't until I got over there that I felt, oh shit, like, okay, I'm pretty normal. Like, you know, there's really not, I'm not, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, oh, you know, because
Yeah.
you know, it's, you know, because like when you go into a different country too, right? It's a different religion, right? It's a different way of life. It's a completely different cultural experience. And am I absolutely going to think that these people are going to hell because, you know, they don't believe in Jesus? No, right? Like, you know, like it's some guy in the sky, right? Like that's so, it's so crazy. It's so sci-fi. Like it really, really is. You know, and um, so yeah, it wasn't until like I completely broke away and got out of Hawaii and got out of the U.S. that I started kind of healing and like leaving back that programming. But again, right? You know, a lot of it's suppressed, and you know, it's not until I started talking about my childhood and about my like early teen life and about victory that I start remembering these things, right? And and I'm like, oh, okay, right? Hindsight's 2020. Okay, now
Yeah.
I know why I did that, and okay, now I know why I did that. You know, like, and even like with my parents, right? My parents had that. My dad got arrested for murder, right? And then my parents had that big, huge civil case, and it wasn't even until like I looked back on that and it was like, oh, like no wonder I was acting out, right?
Yeah.
Like, like my whole life, um, and it's kind of weird because the thing is that the thing that heals the most was the thing that we've never been able to do is just talk about it, right? You know, talk about the things that have like hurt us and that has impacted us and then has, you know, like like when I started talking about it, then I realized, oh, no wonder I was acting out, right? But if my parents would have like spent time talking to me, not even talking to me about like the stuff that I was doing, but just saying, hey, you know, I was young once, and you know, when I was 14, you know, like I got into some trouble, or when I was 16, you know, I stole my parents' car, or you know, like just trying to be people, right? Just like saying, hey,
Right.
like what you're going through is not that unique, and you're not that alone, and it's going to be okay, you know, and you are going to go through an awkward phase, and but the culture that the church fosters is that not about talking, not about
Oh no.
healing, right? Like it's all about God, giving it to God and being accountable to God, and don't talk to anybody else about it because God's going to fix it, right? And you know, and I never understood that too because like if somebody did something like good, right? They didn't do it, God did it, right?
Oh yeah.
And
It's like when you know, somebody goes in for major surgery, you know, you don't praise the doctors, you say God did it. You know, what about the doctors? They're the ones
oh
that
yeah,
made it
right.
happen, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
prayer did it. Yeah, like God was guiding his hands, not him going to 16 years of schooling or whatever.
yeah.
So
You're not allowed to be your own individual. You have to rely on somebody else in this Christian troubled teen home environment. You know what I mean? You have to learn to depend on other people and not yourself. And that's a terrible way to grow up because you need to learn how to rely on yourself. You know
and
what I
you
mean?
don't trust yourself, right? There's like you go through a period of time where they hammer you down and program you not to trust yourself, right? And
Right.
so when you don't trust yourself and then you're being fed all this information about being kind of like a second rate citizen, right? Like
Right.
like we couldn't really, yeah, like what we liked wasn't what we liked. It was what the Palmers liked, right? It was what the adults liked, right? And like it was get along to be safe, and it was to agree with everything that they said, and they did because that's the safe place to be, and
Right.
that's super scary. That's super scary. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one that has been in the trouble teen industry. And after I got out, I was like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that was targeted by pedophiles.
Oh,
Like
sure.
I'm sure because like I said earlier, the three of us that came back to Hawaii, right? One ended up going back and staying there until she was 18, but the other two of us, we like very, very quickly we moved in with adult men, and they knew we were in high school because we were going to school, you know. So and like so I know that I'm not alone, but it's very hard to like look back on that situation and say that I really didn't have a choice, right? Like because you want to think like, oh yeah, like when you're a kid, right? When you're a young kid and you start living on your own at like 16 or 17, you're like, oh, I know everything, and nothing can hurt me, and these are my choices and I'm making them in free will. But are you really?
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
like making one bad situation to get out of another bad situation, right? Like living with my parents who like physically abused me, to going to like another bad situation where like a man is taking advantage of me, like and exploiting me so I could take care of him, right? um like you're just going from and but you feel safer, right? You for whatever reason, like again, like when if you were to ask the 16, 17-year old me if I felt like I was being sex trafficked or if I felt like I was being taken advantage of or anything like that, is and the reason I would have said no is because I wanted to believe that I was in control, right? That I was somehow taking my power back from victory, and starting to have my own voice, not realizing that there's this underlying current that of that programming, of that grooming, that is actually really, really influencing all my decisions.
Yeah.
And that's the and yeah, that's been pretty difficult to go back and kind of like forgive myself for that kind of stuff. And again, not victim blame, because even like in this podcast right here, I I put some responsibility and accountability on me, and it's not my fault, right? Like that the programming and that grooming and that that training where 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 I didn't have a voice, and I didn't feel I could say no, right? Specifically to men, and older men, uh, is a huge is a problem, and I'm glad that you've given me the opportunity to talk about this because I feel that now that I've spoken about it, I feel that maybe other women that are in the troubled teen industry will talk about the impact that it had after, like the choices that we made that weren't really our choices, and um, and how that has impacted us.
Right.
It's taken me years and years and years to work through it. And it wasn't until I got involved with like the domestic action violent groups and getting really actively involved with other, at risk groups that I started realizing, oh, you know what, like I'm a victim too. And it's not abnormal for victims to be in denial about the the situations that they've had.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And but you're doing good now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it took years, right? And again, and and it wasn't until I was about 30 that so I'm 46 now. So it wasn't until I was about 30 I was like, fuck all you motherfuckers, right? Like my moral compass is good. My moral compass has always been good. And you stop questioning and undermining yourself, and you realize that your judgment and your gut instincts, like that gut instinct that I had when I was 14 years old when I first went to victory, was spot on, right? And
Yeah.
then that during over the period of time that 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 got washed out, right? That confidence and that voice. And for me, it didn't really come back until I was about 30. It started gradually coming back, but that ownership of trusting my gut and my moral compass, and knowing that I'm not a bad person, and believing it didn't really happen until I was about 30. And that's
Mhm.
when I went back to college, and I spent, I got a couple degrees, and I spent a lot of time in academia, and through academia too I found out, oh shit, I'm a victim, right? Like, or I'm a survivor, and and really kind of digging up some of the stuff that I've suppressed. So it's not an anchor and it doesn't chain me down anymore. And again, that's the freedom of being able to talk about this stuff, because even coming, I've talked to my clients about this like one on one, and um like I used to do like homeless outreach in like the community and things like that, and a lot of those women have been sexually exploited, and they're still living their trauma. And it wasn't until I started talking about these kinds of things like on one-on-one to clients that I was like, oh, you know what, like I can't let fear control me anymore, because for a long long time fear controlled me, where I didn't feel I could talk about this, because I felt like I would other people were going to judge me just like I judged myself, right? And and it and this whole experience of like being in a cult and being groomed and being programmed and things like that, I really even couldn't like I couldn't really like put my finger on it. And then it's not until you start talking about it and you put words to it, these like abstract feelings and emotions that you have actually start losing power over you. But if
Right.
you kind of keep them inside and you keep them a secret, they still influence your life, and they still have a power over you, because if it's a secret, part of you still ashamed of it, right? And
Right.
you like, and that's the thing about healing, right? When you start to heal, there's no more shame, right? Like it's
Right.
just
There's no more shame.
there's no more shame, and it's is okay, and it's gonna be okay, and everybody's journey is gonna be a little different, and everybody everybody's going to deal with this kind of trauma, and and also our experiences, right? I could be at Victoria Christian Academy with the same exact people, and our experiences could be completely, totally different from each other, and that's okay too,
Yeah.
and and the thing is, like, that's the thing about the school too that has really impacted me, because we never were allowed to make bonds. Like, I still have trouble making bonds today, yeah, I do. Like, we were, the only thing we were allowed to talk to each other about was God, the Bible, and food. We couldn't even talk about our families. So the girls there that I was there with, I don't know anything about their families. I don't know if they have siblings. I don't know anything. And
Yeah.
that's a really sad state of affair when you, like, say that you go to a boarding school, but you don't know anybody. Like, I don't even remember anybody's last names. So, like, I imagine it's hard for us to even find each other, right? Because of the way that was nurtured, and again, that comes to the grooming, right? If we isolate the women and we groom them to not think for themselves, we're always going to seek the men, and specifically older men, right, to give us guidance, because we can't trust other women, and
Mhm.
that was nurtured and fostered. And the reason they don't want us to trust other women is because other women will help us heal, right? Other women will say, no, that's wrong. Other women will say, no, that's not appropriate, but not the women in these highly focused religious groups that for the troubled teen industry,
Yeah.
and yeah, I feel like a lot of times the girls that go there, their parents are overreacting. I feel like a lot of times the girls will grow out of it if the parents were just to trust themselves, and trust themselves, that they knew that they did right by their kids, that their kids will figure it out,
A little,
and
a little bit of open communication. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And also, like, when parents make themselves human, like you say that they've had shame, and they've been, in a difficult situation. uh, you know they My mother didn't share anything with me until, like, I was in my 30s, and I was like, well, why didn't she tell me that when I was younger? That could have helped me. And she's like, well, I just didn't, think, like,
Right.
yeah, like, like
Yeah.
healthy motherly advice or whatever. So so yeah, like that's the situation. So, and it's really, I mean, like, again, right? I'm 46, so we're talking about 32 years that it has adversely impacted my life, and has also, influenced my choices, and that is really, like, beyond my control, unfortunately, right?
Right.
Like, how I mean, after all this time, like, how do we move forward, all of us other girls? Because Jana was talking about it, where she has trouble with female bosses, right? There's this, like, it's this undercurrent that influences our choices and our behaviors, that we don't really recognize until we come out and start talking about it and go, fuck, it really fucked us up.
Yeah, it sure did. Well, it's it was great to have you on again, Carissa,
Yes, thank you
for the
for
second
having
one.
me. And I hope
Yes.
other girls come out and they talk about, like, how, like, the long term impact of this has affected them, and to talk about it, it's going to be okay. And also, talking about it brings it into the light, and the light doesn't, like, the light's not as heavy as the dark, and it will help like it helps freeze me about it.
Light, light is a great disinfectant, let me tell you.
Right?
So,
They bring things out of the shadows, because we're not alone,
right.
and I'm sure that other girls have gotten into really probably heavy drug abuse and things like that too, afterwards, because it's a coping mechanism that I'm sure that is used to help the terrible programming that goes against our natural intrinsic selves, right? Because everything that they taught really goes against healthy
Right.
behavior.
Against everything normal, basically. So,
Right, and but that's the thing, right? Like that's the thing about the grooming, right? The in the programming they try to normalize it, right? And then
yeah,
you start believing that it is normal, and then everybody else has the problem,
yeah.
and that's unhealthy and scary.
All right, Carissa. Like I said, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having you.
Yes, it
Yeah,
was good. It
and
was good seeing you again.
you too,
Hope
you too. And I look forward to your future podcast.
okay. Well, like I said, if you're subscribed to the channel, which by the way, everybody subscribe to the channel. Channel's growing. That way you can be notified. And like I said, one more thing. I have Eric coming on tomorrow, 6:15. He was at the Family Foundation School in Hancock, New York. So be sure to stay tuned for that. All right. So
All right, aloha, everybody. Bye
aloha. It was good
bye.
seeing you. Take it easy.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Like I said, if you want to be on the podcast, just the number is on top of the channel page, and we will send you send me a text. I will send you a text back, and we'll get it all scheduled in. The 8th and 9th, I'll be on vacation in July, so I won't be doing any podcasts then. Okay, so everybody, for the Hammer Podcast, I'm Jason. You take care of yourself, take care of each other, and have a great evening. And we'll see you tomorrow when Eric comes on. All right? Have a great evening.